All right, guys, welcome back. We will now focus our attention on a couple of things with the rhythms, further use of 16th notes in 6/8 meter, and then we'll go into some melodies that focus on the leaps of a minor seventh in the 5/7 chord. So we're going to focus really on jumping from a low sol to a high fa. All right, here's our first rhythm. You can see that the first thing we have is an eighth note pickup into the first measure on mezzo forte, and we break the measures down into two in 6/8, two large beats of three subdivisions. And so we have the first thing is 3 eighth notes. That's about as simple as it gets in 6/8 meter. Now we start to get our 16th notes. So we've got eighth, 2/16, eighth, 3 more 16th notes, and a quarter plus an eighth. And that's going to pick us up into the next phrase, which begins piano. 3 eighth notes, quarter note eighth note, and then 3 more eighth notes. And we have a quarter rest, and the pickup into the next phrase, which begins mezzo forte on an eighth note. Now we start to see some dots. Dotted eighth note leaves 3 more 16th notes for that half bar. So we're going to say tiki tiki. Okay, again, tiki tiki. And then we have a quarter and an eighth. Then the same deal, tiki tiki. And the second half of that measure has tiki ti. So that ending of the little element there is an eighth note rather than 2/16. So it's very similar to the previous one, but it's just a little variation on it. Next line, tiki tiki, dotted eighth, 3/16. Quarter and an eighth note. Then we have 3 eighth notes. All right, now we're going to get into the next phrase with a pickup. So we got a quarter rest and a pickup eighth note with piano. And you can see that we're going to crescendo to the end here. So we've got syncopated 16th note pattern with an eighth note at the end. So tiki ki ti. Again, tiki ki ti. Dotted eighth, 16th eighth, tiki ti. Another syncopation pattern, tiki ki ti. Quarter note, eighth note, syncopation pattern, quarter note, eighth note, and we get louder into the end where we make it so forte for a quarter note and then an eighth rest. And you'll notice at the end we've got a quarter rest that's incomplete. It needs to have another eighth note, and so we get actually that at the very beginning of the exercise with the pickup. So that's where the rest of that measure is. That's what happens with pickups. All right, let us set our metronomes to 58, and let's do this one.
Ti 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 tiki ti 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 ta ti 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 ta ti 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 ki tiki ta ti ti ki tiki ti ki ti ti ki tiki ta ti 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 tiki ki ti ti ki ti tiki ki ti ta ti tiki ki ti ta ti ta.
Second rhythm, still more 6/8. This one begins with a pickup of 2 eighths on piano, and then we get into our first measure. So note that we don't count that pickup measure as a measure. The first measure is actually here where it begins, the first full measure, and that's measure 1. All right, now we see that the dotted eighth note is in the second beat. So we say ti ti ki, ti tiki ti. Okay, that measure is like that. Same thing, ti ti ki, and then ta ti, quarter note and an eighth note. Next measure, eighth note, 2/16 and an eighth, syncopation, tiki ki ti. Dotted quarter note, that takes a full half bar in 6/8, and then we get an eighth rest, and then another sort of pickup into the next phrase. Now we're going to start mezzo piano, and we're going to have 2 eighth notes that lead us into the next phrase. Okay, now it's getting a little trickier. We've got a syncopation, but it leads into 3 more 16th notes. So that's tiki ki tiki, and then a similar kind of a pattern, just without the syncopation part. So tiki tiki, another syncopation, a dotted eighth note followed by a 16th and an eighth. So tiki ti. So I'm sort of holding my T for 3 pulses, 16th note pulses, if you can hear me. Ti. Okay, make sure you subdivide that well. Same thing happens right afterwards in the next measure. And then we have a eighth note, 2/16 eighth pattern, quarter note, eighth note, and then a dotted quarter ends the first line. Next line begins with an eighth rest and then 2 eighth notes, and we're going to go to mezzo forte here. Dotted eighth followed by a 16th and an eighth. Then we got a rest of an eighth note and then 2 16ths and an eighth. So rest, tiki ti, rest, tiki ti. Next, that is followed by a dotted eighth, 16th, eighth. All right, now we've got an eighth rest followed by 4 16th notes, a syncopation pattern, dotted eighth note followed by 3 16ths, syncopation pattern, and then it eases up towards the end. Quarter eighth, quarter eighth, quarter eighth, eighth, and we have a little crescendo into forte from there. So mezzo forte, crescendo to forte, and again you can see that our last measure is incomplete. That's because the rest of the eighth notes are in the beginning pickup measure. Okay, so we sort of lop that off the end and tack it onto the beginning, and that's why we don't count that pickup as a measure. Okay, let us set our metronomes to 66 and let's perform this.
Ti 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 ki ti tiki ti 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 ki ta ti ti tiki ti tiki ki ti ta ti ti tiki ki tiki ti ki tiki tiki ki ti ti ki ti ti ki ti ti tiki ti ta ti ta ti 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 ki ti tiki ti ti ki ti tiki 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 ki ti ti ki tiki tiki ki ti ta ti ta ti ta ti ti.
Now for our melodic portion, we're going to focus on an etude, and this one is in A major. The first part is the first 4 notes, and it's outlining the tonic triad. Do, mi, sol, do. Okay, nice tonic triad there. And then it goes into a dominant 7th chord. Sol, ti, re, fa. That's the dominant 7th. That goes to a little tonic skip, mi, do. So notice that my dominant 7th resolved properly, right? Sol, ti, re, fa, and then fa goes to mi. And then you can sort of hear a back-relating resolution. So ti, do, sol, ti, re, fa, mi, do. All right. Now here is where I've got my dominant 7th skip from sol to fa. So hopefully when we've outlined the dominant 7th just before with all of its notes, sol, ti, re, fa, that'll help you get the dominant 7th leap. Sol, fa. You just focus on the outer voices of that. And that fa resolves to mi, and then it jumps up quickly to sol, which indicates a tonic triad. So I would harmonize that with an A in the bass like this. Mi, sol. See? So the sol fa would be an E in the bass. Sol, fa, and then it would go to mi, sol. That's why we say that these are all implied by the melody. The harmonies are implied by the melody. And then that goes to fa, re, which would imply a dominant 7th. Fa, re, and then it just goes to do at the end. Okay, no tempo for this, no conducting, just sing each pitch and try to focus on getting that dominant 7th.
Do, mi, sol, do, sol, ti, re, fa, mi, do, sol, fa, mi, sol, fa, re, do.
our melodies will feature at some point a leap of the dominant seventh, but also include all of the other sort of melodic elements that we've been studying, all the intervals and all of the implied harmonies. So on this one we have we're in F major. It's the bass clef, and we start with mezzo piano, and we have this little 2-measure idea. Sol, do, ti, do, re, ti. And then sol, mi, fa, re. And then an octave leap on forte. Sol, 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 sol. And then a nice scale down. La, sol, sol, fa, mi, re, do. All right, now we're going to get into the ending section, which has a little pickup quarter note, but the whole thing is like this one unified phrase, and it repeats, so just watch out for that. And it basically outlines all these triads. So sol, mi, do, that's like the tonic. Fa, re, ti, that's the diminished seventh. Mi, do, la, that's a 6th chord, and then re, ti, sol, and that's a dominant chord, a 5, and then you jump up an octave. Sol, mi, do, fa, re, ti, mi, do, la, re, ti, sol. And then you go back D, C, that means da capo, back to the beginning. And then you perform the first part again, up until where it says fine, the end of measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? And that's where you stop. Let's sing an F major scale to get into it. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Let's put our metronomes to 126 and let's sing.
Sol, do, ti, sol, mi, fa, re, sol, 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 la, sol, sol, fa, mi, re, do, sol, mi, do, fa, re, ti, mi, do, la, re, ti, sol, sol, mi, do, fa, re, ti, mi, do, la, re, ti, sol, sol, do, ti, sol, mi, fa, re, sol, 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 la, sol, sol, fa, mi, re, do.
All right, the second melody, we're in B flat major, and I'm going to outline the first 4 measures of this. Notice that we've got do, sol, mi, re, do. That's all tonic triad, and then it goes ti, re, fa. So there you got your dominant 7th notes. Ti, re, fa, mi, re, do, ti. Goes down the scale and stops on ti. So if we think of that as like an implied harmony, ti, re, fa, mi, re, do, ti. If I put an F in the bass under that as the dominant of the key of B flat major, then we get a harmonization implied by this melody. Okay, next 4 bars, we're going to switch our dynamic to forte, so a little dynamic contrast. And then it goes re, sol, fa, there's our leap, mi, re. And then we go do, mi, sol, mi, fa, re, do. And that, so the first part, re, sol, fa, those 3 notes are implying a dominant 7th chord. Re, sol, fa, mi, re, do. And now when we get to that do, we're implying a tonic harmony. Do, mi, sol, mi. And then a little fa, re is a quick 5 harmony, and then it goes right back to do. Okay, let's sing a scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. We'll set our metronomes to 105 and we'll sing.
Do, sol, mi, re, do, ti, re, fa, mi, re, do, ti. re sol fa mi re do mi sol mi fa re do